Hi everyone, there's a story that I saw 3 days ago on Tuesday. LGBT group severs links with Navratilova over transgender comments. This was on the BBC. Honestly, this story has been on my mind for off and on, obviously, for the last 3 days, because there were so many different things to actually think about when considering this story. And I honestly don't think anybody, any media outlet in the last 3 days has done it so far. And I've read quite a bit. And I think they're all missing huge points, and they're all concentrating on minor issues rather than the bigger picture. And what I'm going to try and do here is give you the bigger picture. Now, obviously, this is a story about the LGBTQ community. Now, I want to say this: I'm no expert here. If I get any terminology wrong, I'm very sorry. Just leave a comment, educate me. I'll try and get it right next time. Okay? I can't say fairer than that. I really want to do this story though, because it's a story about unfairness and injustice. So don't come down on me too hard if I do get any of this terminology wrong. So this is the story anyway. Because let's go to Sports Illustrated for this rather than the BBC, because let's not go to state media, hey, wherever we can, or wherever we can get away from it. Because it says here, Martina Navratilova removed from Athlete Alley Advisory Board following a transphobic op-ed. Athlete Alley, a group dedicated to supporting LGBTQ athletes, dropped Martina Navratilova from its advisory board on Tuesday and criticised the 18-time Grand Slam champion for her op-ed in London's Sunday Times. Navratilova criticised the rules regarding transgender women in athletics in her op-ed and called their participation in female events cheating and unfair. And this is the quote from Athlete Alley. This is the statement. Athlete Alley unequivocally stands on the side of trans athletes and their right to access and compete in sport free from discrimination. Okay, that's clear. They're saying that's what their right to access and compete in sport free from discrimination. That's key, that is. I'm not sure how that's possible. I'll get to the end of it. I'll try to anyway. Athlete Alley said in the statement on Tuesday that Martina Navratilova's recent comments on trans athletes are transphobic based on a false understanding of science and data. No, I don't think they are, Athlete Alley. I think that is incorrect. I mean, if Martina Navratilova's got that wrong, then she's got it wrong, but there is a lot of scientific evidence behind, you know, her reasoning here. And perpetuate dangerous myths that lead to the ongoing targeting of trans people through discriminatory laws, hateful stereotypes, and disproportionate violence. And that's the statement that they came out with. Now, God, this is such a difficult subject to talk about, but I am sure that 99.9% of the time, when people from the LGBTQ community complain about discrimination or complain about abuse of any kind, they're right, and it's there. And you know what? I think they're right here as well. I think they are being discriminated against. But, like I say, I don't know whether there's any other way to do it. Let me just quickly get to this, by the way, because this is the sort of shit that they have to put up with in the media, in the LGBTQ community. This is why I say that, and this is why the media just don't help. This is, I mean, I went to Google, just typed in Martina Navratilova, went to the news tab with regards to this story, and this is one of the things that Google spat out as one of the top suggested things. I mean, they won't put WikiLeaks on there on the news tab, they won't put Canary on there or Evolve Politics, but they'll put the conservative woman who spit out vile bile like this. Martina is right, it's just plain wrong to have men competing as women. Now, I don't think the conservative woman has honestly put any thought into that headline at all. And if they have, they are baiting people here. They are just being antagonistic. Because Martina didn't say it's wrong to have men competing as women. That wasn't her terminology at all. So why the hell are you calling them men? They're not men. These are women. And they know that, but they're doing it because they're just bigoted, antagonistic assholes. And they should hold them heads in shame. I'm not saying that's Julie Lynn, by the way. That's just the editor that's written the title, probably. Although, you know what? The article's probably even worse. I didn't necessarily read it, but is to discriminate here against transgender people. The only way to make it fair. This is what I want to ask. And I know that's a difficult question to ask, and I know people in the LGBT community are probably going to lose their shit at the moment, but just bear with me. But because the current men's world record is 9.58 seconds, that's obviously Usain Bolt, and the closest a woman has got is to just within a second. That was Florence Griffith Joyner, by the way, in 1988. So that over 3 decades that has been around. And perhaps one of the reasons why that world record has stood for over 3 decades is because, you know, Florence Joyner was a pretty decent runner, and then one day came back from winter training for a new season, and her body had changed dramatically. The figure and the amount of muscle tone had changed almost overnight, and all of a sudden she was running half a second quicker than anybody else. So that was probably, most people, I would think, there's an asterisk by that world record to say, listen, this is dodgy. It's the same with the 400 metres. Now, these are just a couple of examples. I could obviously show you the long jump, triple jump, throwing events, all sorts. But the current men's world record for the 400 metres is held by Wade van Niekerk with that absolutely blistering run of 43.03 seconds, which I don't think anybody on the planet thought that. I certainly did not think that Michael Johnson's record, 400 metres record, would be broken in my lifetime. But he did it. But the fastest woman is nearly 5 seconds slower than him. And that's Marita Cox, somebody we know who was on a cocktail of steroids, because there were letters that she sent to the East German Athletics Committee or something like that, I think, asking for her to give her more drugs. I want more drugs. I can't train enough. I need more drugs. I need to train. I need to go faster. And that's the whole point of this taking drugs. This is the whole point of them taking drugs, and why there has been so much cheating in sport. Because if you raise things like your testosterone levels, it allows you to train harder and train faster. You know, it's not like you take a pill, a speed pill that you pop in your mouth and it makes you go faster. No, you've still got to train. The drugs just make you allow you to train more. Now, because the reason I bring that up is because in general, those who grow up biologically male have a distinct athletic advantage over their biologically female counterpart, and you can see evidence of that here. You know, this is across the board. It's undeniable. To deny that would be to deny science. You know, you're borderline now DUP denying the dinosaurs existed. You know, and the reason this is because boys sort of develop faster, I suppose, physically than girls. You know, because of higher testosterone levels, certain and other levels like that, their bones develop density quicker, their muscles develop quicker, which obviously increases their stamina and their strength and their ability to go farther, their ability to go faster and further. And that all helps them train and get even stronger than a woman ever could. You know, obviously, on the whole, this is. And to those who say it makes no difference, no, it makes no difference. Well, why do you think drug cheats take drugs? You know, they're trying to emulate that in a way. And which brings me on to, by the way, Lance Armstrong, and he's probably the biggest cheater out there, I would think, in sporting history. And I can't stand the guy, not because he cheated, but because he ruined the lives of those who knew about his cheating, who were exposing it. He ruined their lives. But I still think it's a bit bad that if you type in Lance Armstrong to Google, I think it's a bit of a kick in the teeth that the top people also ask question is, how many balls did Lance Armstrong have? I still think that's a little bit that's terrible, you know. But I mean, this is a guy that cheated his way to, what, 6 or 7, whatever it was, yellow jerseys in the Tour de France. And obviously everybody was cheating back then. Everybody was. Now, the way he never failed a drugs test, by the way, and the way obviously he got around it was this. And this is just a good explanation of how these drugs work and how high levels of testosterone and EPO and all this sort of stuff helps you train harder. Because what would happen is before he started taking the drugs, he would have a blood transfusion. He would transfuse his blood out. They would store that in a freezer. And obviously at the same time, all the blood would come in from a donor. And then he would start his training block, which meant, right, okay, this is where we do the EPO injections, and this is where you do the training. They would do the whole block of training, months of training, whatever it was, obviously pump him all up with whatever that would make him train harder and faster and more endurance and more stamina and etc. And then at the end of the training block, just before it comes to competition time, they would have another transfusion, and he would transfuse in the blood that he would transfused out a few months ago that's been stored, and out the dirty blood with all the traces of the EPO, etc., and the traces of his cheating. That's why he passed every single drugs test that he took, because he had clean blood inside him. His dirty blood had gone elsewhere. And there were stories of people who had done this at the time, and they're saying, yeah, when you're having the blood transfusion back in, all of a sudden you go really cold, because obviously the blood's been in the freezer and you can feel it going through your veins. It's horrible. The lengths they went to go to cheat. But this is why they cheat. And they're looking for any edge that you can get over the competition that will allow you to train a little bit harder, a little bit faster, that will allow your muscles to heal quicker. This is another thing that boys recover quicker than girls because of these higher levels as well. There's more oxygen in the blood, etc., etc. You know, I'm not a biologist, but this is scientific fact. Now, obviously, this is real cheating by a real cheater. And I'm not saying that any transgender woman who wants to compete would be cheating either. I'm not saying that. But what maybe them cheating would make it unfair. Them competing would make it unfair. Because sports like cycling and athletics especially have been dogged with, you know, just scandals involving drugs for years. I remember the Ben Johnson scandal. I mean, that's how old I am. I remember how disappointed he was because he was my hero. He beat Carl Lewis. We hated Carl Lewis. We couldn't stand him. He beat him, and then the next day we found out that he was, you know, he was off his eyeballs. I mean, I was a kid. I didn't realise it, but most people, I suppose, did at the time. But the people who are running these sports know that with the amount of money and how important, you know, edges are now, and how competitive everything is, and how there's a razor's edge between, you know, pushing yourself to the limit and going too far. They know that they've got to make their sports fair for them to continue, because otherwise the people, the fans, the people who watch, they're going to stop watching. If they think it's unfair or people have an advantage over other people, they're going to stop watching, and the money's going to go away. But so they have to make it clean for the fans, but they also have to make it clean for the athletes as well. And this is the thing. They've got to make it clean for the athletes who are clean. It's not just what happens when they're cheated. You know, it's not just the fact that they miss out on medals because somebody ahead of them on the podium are cheating. For instance, this is Goldie Sayers. This is the British javelin record holder. She's thrown further than any other woman, further than Tessa Sanderson, you know, or Fatima Whitbread or anybody. Now, she did that in 2008 in Beijing, I seem to remember. And she threw farther than she'd ever thrown before. She was coming into the prime of her career. She trained as hard as she possibly could, and she knew that she was good enough to get a medal. She came fourth. It devastated her. You know, the person who came third just came out of nowhere. So over the next following years, because Goldie Sayers is so determined, because hey, which athlete isn't? She pushed and pushed and pushed herself in training because she knew she had to do more to be able to get a medal. And she pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed until her body totally broke down. And she had massive problems with her throwing arm, the javelin thrower, remember. She had to have multiple operations on her arm. She never got close to even getting close to that record again. And was due to retire around 2017, around 2 years ago. And then she finds out that the lady that came third in 2008, she failed a retroactive drug test. They keep obviously samples and of tests from previous Olympics. And as drugs testing gets better, they go back and retest samples. And she failed, and they found out that she cheated. Now, she finally got her bronze medal. Golda Sayers did last year. It was given to her, I think it was at one of the athletics events at the London anniversary games, I seem to remember. I certainly remember Kelly Southerton, something similar happened to her. But it's not just the fact, she's got the bronze medal, and it's not just the fact that they cheated Goldie out of that moment on the podium that she wanted all her life and trained for all her life. But it's the sponsorship, it's the recognition, it's the media attention that came after. Because she would have got the sponsor. Not only would she have done what she knew that she was capable of doing, she would have got the sponsorship, she would have got airtime, she would have got all sorts of things on the way her life could have gone, and the opportunities that she would have gotten would have opened a massive amount of doors. And most importantly, she would have known that she didn't have to push herself as hard as she pushed herself when she came fourth. And maybe she could have gone on to get better and win a silver or even a gold. Who knows? But as it turns out, she went on to win nothing more on a global stage. She struggled to even get into finals, whereas before she was one of the top 5 in the world. This is what drugs cheats do to people. And this is what happens when athletes are not competing on a fair playing field. You have to make it fair, and the people in these sports, especially athletics, are not so much about cycling. I think there's still a huge question over cycling. There's still a huge question over athletics, but I do get the feeling that they are at least trying to come up with parameters that make it fair for those who can compete. Now, with Goldie Sayers, obviously, that cheat, it finished her career, and they have to make sure going forward that they make rules that don't finish people's career and don't ruin people's lives. And that leads me on. And it's not just drugs, this isn't. It's all sorts of things that they have to think about here. It's not just the drug cheats and make it so much difficult for the drug cheats to not cheat people like Goldie, but also, obviously not have transgender women who've had the benefit of their bodies, obviously developing at a much more rapid rate than they're younger. I will go on to it a little bit more in a little bit, but it leads me on to this story of Caster Semenya. I'm not being hyperbolic here when I'm telling you that this is one of the saddest stories I have ever heard in my life. And I've known about this now for years. It's one of the saddest stories I have ever known in my life. And I'll explain why at the end, but I feel so sad for Caster. But not just for her. I feel sad for any athlete who competes against her, and anybody right now and they are right now, trying to come up with some decision and come up with some sort of set of parameters that make it fair. And I feel just so bad for them. So in 2008, let me go to her Wikipedia page. Let me pull up her Wikipedia page and just so I can outline things. Because in 2008, so she's born in 2001. 2008, she's 17 years old. And she goes to the 2008 World Junior Championships and wins the gold in a time of 2 minutes and 4 seconds, which is obviously quick. It's quick for an 800-meter adult runner, let alone a junior. And a year later, in 2008, she was running 9 seconds quicker than that and winning the World Championship at a canter by 3 or 4 seconds. Now, obviously, when this happened, people started asking questions. Not just because, you know, of the rapid amount of time she'd be able to cut off her personal best, I mean, nearly 10 seconds in a year, but also her appearance. And afterwards, she faced what can only be described as a series of it was mishandled so badly. I don't think they could have handled the situation any worse than they did. Any worse. I won't go into the full story because it's horrible. It really is. But they cocked it up totally, and nobody was hurt more than Caster Semenya out of it all. I feel so bad for her. The level of privacy that they have gone into, the level of detail with her, I don't wish that on anybody. But what was found out basically as a result of it is she is a woman, and she always has been a woman. And what she was saying all along, I am a woman, I always have been a woman, was true. However, she has an anomaly, and I'll just call it that. And this anomaly produces a much higher level of testosterone in her body than the 99.99999% of women. And this is obviously a huge advantage for her because higher levels of testosterone obviously, as I say, affect your ability to go faster, to go further, to jump higher, to be stronger, to increase your endurance, to increase your stamina, to train harder, and to be much faster than anybody who hasn't got those levels, or if you didn't have those levels of testosterone in your body. Hi everyone, this is just a little point I wanted to add in the edit. I wanted to put this in the video, but I actually skipped over it in the points that I was trying to make. But obviously coaches saw Caster Semenya's rise and saw what she could do against the rest of the field when competing against women. Obviously what they did, knowing that somebody like Caster Semenya was a golden ticket for them in these, you know, poorer African countries especially, they would then go out looking for other young girls who had this trait that Caster Semenya had, that had an abnormally high level of testosterone in their body, and were looking for them at a young age to then obviously sign them, to train them, and for years later for them to be competing in the Olympics. You know, this is the lengths that people were going to actually get an advantage just based on the trait that Caster Semenya had. So you can see here, this is not just about Caster Semenya. She's not just the only person in the world who has got this sort of anomaly. There are others, and coaches were obviously looking for that. So I just wanted to make that point for you all. Now, this is obviously not Caster's fault here. It's not her fault. She has those higher levels of testosterone, which make it, let's face it, unfair her racing in a race with women who do not. It is unfair on people like Lindsay Sharp of Scotland. It's unfair on other runners because I've seen interviews with Lindsay Sharp after a run. She's distraught. After she's come in second or third or fourth or fifth to Caster, she's distraught because she knows there's no way she can compete with her. There's no way that she can compete with Caster Semenya. She hasn't got this genetic quirk that Caster Semenya has got. It doesn't matter how hard she trains. It doesn't matter how dedicated she is. It doesn't matter how much she changes her diet. It doesn't matter any of it. She will never be able to train as hard as Caster Semenya because Caster Semenya has a much higher level of testosterone or whatever the chemical is. It's just, I don't really need to go into the details, but she knows. So how is it fair on Lindsay Sharp to have Caster Semenya in her race? How is that fair? And so, I mean, Lindsay Sharp knows the only way that she can compete with Caster Semenya is to cheat herself and artificially raise her levels. you know, it'll have the adverse effect on other athletes. They'll almost say to them, yes, you can never win unless you cheat. So that's basically what they're saying. And there was another thing that I wanted to get to here, but it's just got out of my head. But they have to make the sport, whatever the sport is, fair for everybody who competes in it. That's what I really want to get to. The people who compete in the sport, you have to make it fair for them. I've just remembered what the other point was I wanted to make. You may say, right, okay, well, why don't you just bring down Caster's testosterone levels? Artificially bring them down. You can do that with drugs. Well, they tried it. And she was nowhere as competitive as she was before. She wasn't even qualifying for finals, you know? They tried it, I think, for a year, a couple of years ago. And also, that's still, you know, really isn't fair. It's not fair on Caster. But it's also not fair, it's still not fair on the other people in the race because she still had all the training and what have you beforehand. You know, I don't think there is a fair solution here for Caster Semenya. Same as I don't think there is a fair solution for anybody in the LGBTQ community who wants, as a transgender woman, for instance, to compete against other women. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not a woman. It doesn't mean that you're not a woman, and it doesn't mean that you're cheating. It doesn't mean either of those things. But what it means is, if a transgender woman competes against other women, and it means it's not fair on those other women who didn't have those advantages. There's no fair solution here to be able to include everybody. Do you see the point I'm making? There's no fair solution. There's no set of guidelines that you can write to be able to go, that's fair for everybody. None. Which is why I feel so bad for these people at the moment who are trying to make these rules and decisions, because there is no rule or decision that they can come up with that is A, going to make it fair, and B, is going to make everybody happy. Because whatever they decide, everybody is going to be unhappy. Everybody. Whatever they decide with Caster Semenya and whatever they decide with transgender women from the LGBTQ community or anything like that. Like I say, if I have got any terminology wrong, I'm sorry. I'm sorry if I've got any terminology wrong, but this is a story that not only is really sad, not only is really complicated, not only has so many different moving parts and so many different things to actually think about, I don't think anybody else has done it properly. I don't think anybody else has put all these things into context. And that's what I wanted to do, even though I know the subject matter itself was probably going to land me in trouble, because I'm bound to have said something wrong at some stage throughout this video. So if I have, I didn't mean to. I wanted to do my best, and I don't think anybody else has done a good enough job. But the conclusion of this is, so does this, the most controversial in sport, have a fair solution? The answer here is, I think, honestly, no. I think the only way to make the sport, whether that be athletics, whether that be cycling or whatever, the only way to make the sport fair for those who compete in it is to discriminate and actually stop people competing in it who would make it unfair on people like Lindsay Sharp. For more truly honest, independent media like the video you just saw, please subscribe and click the bell below as well so you get a notification of when I drop further videos. If you also like and share and comment on the video as well, that really helps with the algorithm and boosts exposure. And if you can support me, please do so. You can do with any of the avenues on the screen at the moment and below this video. You can support me for as little as $1 a month on Patreon, and every dollar helps. We need your support at the moment. We do not have an operating fourth estate. I'm sure you're aware, a functioning media holding power accountable is vital for democracy. At the moment, we haven't got it. So people like me are having to fill their shoes and do the job for them with your support. Thanks very much for your support. Till next time. Peace and take care.